Yeah, I mean, Greg, let's talk about the governor's race. For the Republicans, it's between Governor Kemp and Perdue, who has the backing, as we just heard, from former President Trump. In your latest report for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, you noted, quote, Kemp is poised for a big win Tuesday, but Trump's shadow looms large. And, quote, even the governor's loyalists acknowledge that Trump's hatred of Kemp likely won't abate if Perdue's bid collapses. How is Kemp walking that line?
Well, he's trying to walk a very delicate balance here, saying at one hand, he won't say a bad word about Donald Trump. He won't kind of take the bait. The other hand, he knows that he needs Donald Trump's supporters. Donald Trump is still one of the most popular Republican figures in Georgia. And Republicans here know that Trump isn't going to wake up on Wednesday and suddenly decide that Brian Kemp is a good guy. He's put the governor on top of his revenge list for more than a year. And now his former running mate, Mike Pence, is scheduled to be here tonight to rally for Brian Kemp. So it's very personal for the former president. And Brian Kemp is going to have to find a way to mobilize those diehard Trump voters, something he's tried to do by painting Stacey Abrams as this arch villain of all Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, and on the Democratic side, Stacey Abrams is running unopposed for governor of Georgia. I want to play something she said over the weekend that's taking some criticism from Republicans.
I am tired of hearing about being the best state in the country to do business when we are the worst state in the country to live. When you're number 48 for mental health, when you're number 1 for maternal mortality, when you have an incarceration rate that's on the rise and wages that are on the decline, then you're not the number 1 place to live.
What would you make of those comments, Insee?
I think that there's zero daylight between Stacey Abrams and the average Georgia voter, that she did not bring these issues up out of whole cloth. That this is exactly what those of us who spend our time talking directly to voters as opposed to talking to ourselves, this is exactly what we are hearing. That the minimum wage in Georgia is $5.15. It's below the federal minimum wage of $7.25. We're still dealing with the long and term impacts of COVID. Again, you are more likely to die in childbirth living in Georgia than in many countries in the world, et cetera, that these are not, these issues are not foreign, that they are present and at the front of Georgians' minds. And it sounds like, again, that gearing up to draw the comparison, to invite the comparison between herself and her very likely opponent this fall, Brian Kemp. And the other thing I would add is that, number one, historically, Republicans in Georgia have taken advantage of vote by mail at rates higher than Democrats. And number two, because there's so much energy and because there are these hotly contested primaries on the GOP side, I think that is what can account for the 100,000 vote difference during early voting. And then the third thing I would say, because of the hotly contested races on the GOP side, we're also seeing Democrats and independents pull Republican ballots. And so tomorrow is going to be a fascinating day for voting, for voting rights, for political scientists, and understanding what is happening in our country right now.
Certainly will be. We can all agree on that one. Hey, Greg, let's talk quickly on the Senate. Republican Herschel Walker, former NFL running back, is leading the pack despite not participating in any primary debates. Is that just because of his name recognition?
It's in part because of his name recognition. Folks like me who were born after his playing days at University of Georgia grew up hearing stories about Herschel Walker's football playing legends. He didn't even have to run a single ad in Georgia, and his name recognition is near universal. But it's also because he's been that rare politician to bridge the gap between the sort of old line Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who endorsed him, and Donald Trump. He's got the endorsements from a lot of leading Republican figures, and he scared a lot of top Republicans out of the race before he even entered. And since he entered the race last summer, he's been entirely focused on Raphael Warnock in November. He has not even mentioned his primary rivals' names, even as they've scaled up their attacks. So that is how confident he is. He's even scheduled a unity celebration tomorrow, inviting his Republican rivals to show up with him to show unity. And of course, that invitation has gone unanswered by his rivals who still feel like they have a shot.
So, Michael, just what does Walker's success here tell you about, I don't know, the different kind of Republican that we're seeing running many times across the board?
Well, celebrity helps. Celebrity helps a lot. African American helps on the Republican side. That is a very enticing combination. The problem that Herschel Walker has is that he's not going to be able to avoid Raphael Warnock once the general election starts. He's not been tested. He's not been pressed. And at the times that he has come out and made statements, the parties find themselves having to either run away from them, clean them up. So there's a lot to this package, a lot more to this package than the running of it, than the presentation of it. Going back to the conversation we just had, Georgia voters are probably now, particularly on the heels of 2018 and 2020, some of the most sophisticated voters in the country, period, bar none. You cannot pull one over. You just can't roll in with your celebrity and the glitz and the glam and think you're going to get the prize just because. You're going to have to prove your worth to those voters, and that's going to be a very interesting challenge in a general election. Wasn't necessary in the primary because everyone galvanized and said, okay, we're going with the bright, shining object. Now you got to go into a general election and run with that bright, shining object that has a lot of dull spots on it. And that's going to be interesting to watch.
Indeed it will. Michael Steele, Greg Bluestein, Inse Ufot, and Vaughn Hilliard, thank you very much for being